Hello there, everyone. Just getting started here early. Just waiting for the attendees to all come in. Just wanted to log in here a few minutes early to welcome any early arrivals that might be in the room. But if you're in here, thank you so much for attending. I'm looking forward to giving you all the information that you're going to need to start your own law practice. My name is Antonia Berry. If you don't know me or if you have not come across me before, I am the CEO and Chief Strategist at Strategy Academy and also the Chief Business Development Officer here with our agency. So I just wanted to welcome you in here, just give individuals who have registered to attend a few minutes to jump in. But thank you so much for being here, especially if you're in here and you're in early. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm just going to give the other registrants a few minutes to come in before we get started. It's a few minutes more before we kick off. Definitely want to respect everybody's time and start at our prompt and scheduled start time. But I will just allow just 2 more minutes for people to funnel in to the platform here. So excited about this boot camp. So excited to help and support future law firm founders in ways that they can launch their own law practice, whether it's moving from an existing partnership that you are part of, or perhaps you're a part of Big Law. Would love to be a part of that journey. Would love to support you as you make that transition to this new venture. Just allowing a few more minutes for registrants to pour in. Just 1 more minute until we get started on the boot camp, just allowing a little bit of time for the other attendees to log in. See a couple of people in the room so far. Just hang tight as I wait a few minutes just for other attendees to enter. All right, and we're going to go ahead now and get started with the boot camp. There will be a recording of this boot camp that will be circulated after we've completed this session. And if you have any questions, please be sure to put them in the chat. And once the boot camp is over, I will go through each of the questions for you. I will stop the recording first just to allow those who are asking questions to have a level of confidentiality. So if you have any questions, please do not be shy and put them in the chat, and I will be more than happy to answer them at the end of this boot camp. So welcome and thank you so much for being here today. My name is Antonia Berry. I am a law firm business developer and also the CEO of Strategy Academy. I've been in the industry for 20 years now, where I've worked with national and international law firms to start law practices, open global offices, and also to expand beyond where they are currently at in their growth. So law firms that I have worked with have been small, some large, some medium, some boutique size, just kind of depending on where they're at. I've met them where they're currently at and grown those practices from there. Strategy Academy is based in Atlanta. However, we work with clients across the United States. That is whether it's one-on-one to do coaching with individual attorneys. And we also work with groups to run workshops. And of course, we offer this program where attorneys work with us one-on-one to launch their law practices from the start, all the way to turning their key at the door. So just before we dive deeply into the content today, I just wanted to take an opportunity to carve out exactly who this boot camp is for, because I want to ensure that you are using your time wisely and that you're in the right place. I don't want individuals in the room to find that they have gone through half or the entire session and realizing that they're in the incorrect space. So before I get started, just to ensure that you are the right fit for this, the bootcamp that you're currently attending is specifically designed for attorneys that are launching a new law practice. That means that they're a sole practice practitioner. They are going to be moving into practicing solely on their own, or they're a small firm that's going to be started with just a small group of law firm founders. Or perhaps you're an attorney that's a part of big law and you're wanting to exit big law, or perhaps another partnership that you're a part of. Now, let's dive into the truth about starting a law practice, because it is very important that I lay the foundation for this. Without this piece, you will be misled. So I have to first lay this foundation. I have to tell you that starting a new law practice is not just about opening a practice. This is about starting a business, which means that you are going to go from being just a practitioner to now being a business owner and a practitioner. And I strongly believe that in knowing that out the gate, that helps you to adjust your mindset and knowing that you're not just going to be practicing law freely just on your own and not having to do other things outside of practicing the law. Instead, you're going to have to run a business, which means that you're going to have to do all the things that it takes to start the business and to keep it going until you get into a position where you're able to retain staff and to also add resources to help you run your practice. And just to compare what ownership is versus being owned, meaning owning your own law practice versus being within a practice in a law practice where you are owned, here are what the differences are, right? And this is going to help you understand what the difference is going to be between where you're currently at now and where you're going to be once you become a law firm owner. So if you are owning a law practice, that means that you control your time, you control your client relationships, and most importantly, your calendar. This gives you the opportunity to be, yes, an individual who practices law, but you can still be present in your life. You can be present in your family's life. You can do things on your terms, on your schedule, on your based on your calendar, and not on somebody else's. Your income is tied to your value, not your hours, which means that you're no longer on the billable hamster wheel. That's what I like to call it. You decide how to grow, scale, and specialize your practice. You can decide whether or not you want to join forces with another firm to grow and expand your practice, or perhaps you can decide that you want to remain as a solo practicing attorney. Next, you decide what systems you want to place in your firm. You get to replace chaos and false urgency. If you are in a law practice, especially big law, by now you know exactly what that means. That means that every single thing that you're working on is no longer an emergency, is no longer a fire drill. You get to determine what a fire drill looks like. You get to understand and to decide what chaos is and what it's not. And in most cases, you actually get to eliminate that from your practice because you determine what you will and will not tolerate. Owning your own law practice will also give you the freedom, flexibility, and as well as intentional fulfillment, meaning that you get to practice on purpose, on your purpose. You get to build a business asset, which essentially is your legacy. What are you leaving behind? Now, let's compare that to what it looks like where you're currently at, where you're being owned, where you are owned by the practice that you're in. Your time is dictated by billable hours and someone else's priorities. You're building someone else's legacy and working on their terms. You're working in a business that never truly is owned by you. Even if you are a partner, you're always 1 degree off from being the owner. Your compensation is capped regardless of your results or your efforts. And if you're in big law, I don't even have to explain that. If you're a part of a practice where you're being dictated to, you fully understand what that means. Your clients belong to the firm, not you, which means that you probably don't even get to speak to the clients directly. If you do, you're probably in the presence with somebody else, which means that you don't get to build those relationships. Your decisions require approval, politics, and patience, which is perhaps the most draining part about being owned and being within another law practice that you don't get to have any autonomy over. Growth means more work. We all know this, but that does not mean more freedom, right? You can actually work until you are beyond tired and still get nowhere. And lastly, burnout is normalized and expected. This is where you work tirelessly and still you are not good enough to be an owner. You are not good enough to be a partnership. You're not even good enough to talk to the clients, which now leads me into some statistics that I have gathered that I would love to share with you here. So here are some industry stats that I want to share. According to the American Bar Association, almost 28% of attorneys struggle with depression and 19% experience anxiety. Um, if you are in big law or in a practice where you're on that billable hamster wheel, you know exactly what this means. You are stressed, you have anxiety, you're jumping up at night wondering what deadline did you miss. Your phone's going off, clients are emailing and calling and texting, and you're expected to respond right away. Partners in the law practice are calling, texting, and emailing, and they're expecting you to burn whatever bridge you're on and get to the response to them right now. So roughly 60 to 70% of attorneys are experiencing burnout. Burnout is real in law firms, especially when you are in a larger law practice. You are emotionally exhausted, and most times you're detached and performing at a very minimal or reduced rate. Those in big law or litigation heavy practices tend to report this higher burnout rate. And if you're in big law, you're in a bigger law practice, perhaps you're maybe even in a medium sized law practice, you probably have experienced this. Hence why you're wanting to open your law practice and get off that billable hamster wheel. And these contributors are extreme workloads, lack of flexibility, and limited control. These are usually the things that take you there, that get you to just being at wit's end, wishing that perhaps you didn't even go to law school and that you probably even want to exit practicing law. I assure you that it's not the practice of law that's causing you to have those feelings. It's actually your environment. And of course, that perceive value or lack of purpose that just burns you out. Many attorneys find themselves working on matters that they don't even align with, or perhaps, they don't believe in perhaps what the arguments might be to support what the client that's being defended or perhaps represented are matching up to. So that then, of course, gives automatic resistance because you truly don't believe in what is being presented and argued and fought for. But you have no choice because you're a part of this law practice. You've been given a matter to work on, and your job is to work for the client. Whereas if you were in your own practice, you can essentially, politely decline to represent that client. Or if you start representing that client and their values no longer align with yours, you're able to exit that matter. However, if you're inside of a law practice and that's a matter that's been put on your desk to work on, you have no choice but to work on that matter. But again, if you're in your own law practice, you get to determine what you work on. You get to determine what matters align with your values and your goals, and you attract more of them that way. And this leads me to tell you about the Blueprint program. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about this program here. However, I'll talk about it later, but I just wanted to introduce this program here so that you know that there is a solution to the problem that you are facing by being trapped in a law practice that you perhaps no longer want to be a part of. There is a solution to you starting your own practice, and it's foolproof. It has been proven. It is not something that requires you to do the guesswork. And most importantly, it's going to cost you a lot of less money and time to launch your law practice by using what is a proven blueprint, a proven strategy for you to get from thinking about starting your law practice into turning the key. So why the blueprint? Why did I create the blueprint? Obviously, because I worked in big law before. And most importantly, I was pushed out twice. On the first occasion when I was pushed out was when I was pregnant with my second child. And as you probably may have witnessed before or experienced before, being human and having to take off time from work is not something that's tolerated or welcomed by law practices. The first time I was pushed out of the law practice, I was pregnant with my daughter, as I mentioned before. And when I went in to tell my direct report that I was expecting a child, I automatically became the enemy. I was retaliated against and even treated as if I was doing something wrong by deciding to have a child while being employed by this particular law practice. On the second time that I was pushed out of a law practice, because partly I was not convinced the first time that this was a bad idea of being in a big law practice. I had what was a cancer scare, went into my Derek report to tell them about this, sent an email, and within 24 hours, I was terminated. So this gives you some indication of what it looks like to be ejected and how easy it is for these law firms to push you out, especially if you're a part of a bigger law practice. And of course, outside of all of that, my passion for community law firms that serve their communities is perhaps the biggest reason why I created the blueprint, because I really want to see law practices go back to serving the communities that they're a part of, instead of growing into these huge, huge law practices that have a bunch of attorneys that are on this billable hamster wheel, and they're just taught to bill, 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 and it doesn't even matter what they're billing for. Next, because of my love and drive for justice, the law, and rights, I believe that each and every person should have access to justice, access to fair trial, and their rights should also and always be represented. And that's why, for me, law firms should always exist, but exist in a way where they're serving and not taking away from the communities that they're in. Also, I myself, I'm a business owner. I know what it's like to go through starting a business without a blueprint, without any type of leadership, without a focus, just kind of doing a hit or miss every single time I was trying something new. So that led me to start this blueprint, because I know what it takes to start a law practice for an attorney. I know what it takes to put all the chips on the board, and I know how to move them around to see that law practice win. I know what it takes from start to finish, and I don't have to guess anymore. When I started my agency, I was guessing the entire time. I was doing trial and error, and with this blueprint, none of that exists. Of course, you're going to have some days where it's unpredictable and it's not what you perhaps want it to be, but for the most part, getting to the point where you're turning the key and opening the door, there's no guesswork involved there. So that's why this workshop is being offered today, and also why you're being given this blueprint to launch your practice. And like I said before, I've done it many times and I just love it. Now, after this session, you are going to get a few bonus items that are going to help you along the way, whether that's you starting today or perhaps you're starting later on. But I just wanted to extend to you an opportunity to thank you, first of all, for being here. and to offer you this free guide and checklist on how to open an IOLTA account. If you are starting a new law practice, an IOLTA account is going to be one of the first things that you set up. And even if you decide not to proceed with this program, I would love for you to have this free guide and checklist, because this is perhaps the number one way to lose your practice if you don't set it up correctly. So at a minimum, I would like to see you succeed in that way. So in addition to circulating the recording of this boot camp today, I am also going to include the IOLTA startup checklist and guide for you. I am also going to allow a 15% discount on the Practice Blueprint program, just to allow those who have attended this bootcamp today an opportunity to get a front row seat to starting their law practice, and also to get that 15% discount. As I mentioned before, you're going to get that IOLTA guide. And most importantly, after you finish this session today, you will be able to understand what it takes to launch a law practice and to determine whether or not you're going to be willing to do what is necessary for you to get started. So first off, when you're starting a new law practice, before you do anything, the mindset shift needs to happen. That means that you need to understand the territory that you're in. As I mentioned before, you're no longer just going to be practicing law. You are also going to be an entrepreneur, which means that you're going to be running a business, right? So one of the first things that we do in this program is we do this mindset shift exercise, where we help you to understand what territory you're in, where you have just entered, and try to teach you the best that we know how to think like an entrepreneur. This is a mental transformation that happens, that moves you from allowing space to be taken up in your mind with imposter syndrome, where your inner critic is converted to your inner leader. And with that inner leader, you're able to take yourself from, that space of being in complete, being paralyzed in analyzing what do you do next, being confused, being taken down by imposter syndrome, but instead invoking your inner leader to push you forward. Then you need to move on to defining your key area of practice. This is essentially one of the missteps that attorneys, kind of underestimate. And that is because they think, oh, I'll just kind of figure it out along the way. I'll, get there eventually in understanding what area of practice I'm going to be in, or I'm just going to do everything in the beginning. And then, over time, my practice will just define itself. That is not the way that effective law practices are started. And that's not the way that they win. And that's not the way that they grow and become the law firms that they need to be. Instead, what we do is we take time to carve out who your ideal client is. There's an entire exercise that needs to be done here that requires you to determine who these clients are, where do you find them, how do you interact with them, and most importantly, what is the problem that you solve for them? Right? So you need to understand more about this client than you perhaps understand now in being in your law practice, because it was never your job to define your practice area and to find your clients. But now it is, because you're owning a business and you're having to do every single thing in the business. You're also going to have to determine what types of matters you're going to handle. And I'm not just saying, oh, I'm in trust, so I do trust law. No, it's a little bit more than that. If you're going to be in the trust space, what does that mean? Like, are you going to be writing wills? Are you going to only be establishing trust? Will you fund the trust? Like, you need to really carve out what you're going to be doing in that space. And then you need to determine whether or not you're going to be covering any of the potential litigation. In every single practice of law, in every single area, there is a potential for litigation, but that does not mean that you are going to litigate the case. So you need to be prepared to figure out where that case, where that matter, where that client goes in the event that litigation spins off in some regard, some respect with that case. Where are you going to send it? Who you're going to send it to? So you need to also be thinking about, if I'm going to litigate, what do I need to have in place to be a litigator in addition to being a practicing attorney? Or who do I send these matters to? Do I have those relationships in place? Have I identified individuals that I trust to send these cases to, who will take care of the client and who will also allow you to still be involved with the client so that you can maintain the relationship? Next, you need to build the business structure. What that means is that you need to register the entity with the state that you're in. You need to determine, what are you going to be? Are you going to be an LLC? Are you going to be a PC? Like, what are you going to be? What is allowed in the state that you're in? What other licenses do I need to have in place depending on the type of practice area that I'm in? And of course, the one missed thing that goes on the back of this business structure piece is your licensing. What licensing, meaning licensing with the city that you're in, do you need to have? All of that needs to be considered as you build out this business structure piece. You also need to be thinking about your operating agreement. How are you meant to operate? What are you putting in place to operate this business? You need to have this all in writing, and it's of course advisable for you to have a business attorney who looks over this. These are all pieces that are covered in the practice blueprint program that I mentioned earlier, and it goes into detail as to how it's to be done, who you're meant to be doing it with, and we hold your hand along the way with our one-on-one sessions to ensure that you get it done and get it done correctly. And I mentioned before these IOLTA accounts that need to be set up. You need to set up the banking accounts that need to be set up with a reputable and approved financial institution to house your IOLTA accounts. Not every financial institution and not every bank can take on an IOLTA account and operate it correctly. And if you end up going with an institution that is not approved by the state bar in your state and something goes wrong, you will be reported to the state bar, and essentially you can lose your law license because of this. So this has to be done correctly. It has to be done with the right financial institution. And of course, second to that, the accounting systems that you put in place have to work along with your IOLTA accounts. You also need to get insurance, the right insurance that back the business structure that you put in place to run your law practice, because you need to have the right insurance coverages for the state that you're in and the practice area you're in, and also for the types of matters that you're going to be working on. And I'm going to mention compliance here as well, because that's a very important piece for you to consider. Being in compliance with the state bar of your state is going to be a very important piece to consider here. Your business plan and development is the next piece that you need to be working on. And again, this is a part of the practice blueprint program. Our program walks you through the exact steps that you need to focus on to ensure that you write a business plan that is efficient, is effective, and is going to be able to position you to grow over the next year, 18 months to 24 months. In this business plan, you need to include revenue goals. You need to include financials. You need to determine your pricing strategy. Like, what are you going to charge per hour? Are you going to do flat rate? Are you going to do contingency? Are you going to do a subscription-based practice? All of this needs to be included in your business plan. So as you're writing out your business plan, you need to ensure that you capture these areas, and they all need to tie together and work with your operational setup as well. So as you write your business plan, whether you're doing it with our program or you're doing it on your own, be sure to include these major areas within that business plan, because you need to be able to know where you're at and where you're going And when you do decide to acquire staff, they need to know what the plan is for your business and being able to fall in line with what you have planned for your business. This business plan is also structured for you to take it to a financial institution in the event that you need to get funding for your business. So be sure to capture perhaps a picture of this slide if you want to have it handy, or you can, of course, wait for it to come through in the recording after this session. And then you need to create your market position. This is where you start working on things like the name of your firm, your brand, your branding, looking at what are you going to say in your messaging, in your social media presence? What is it going to look like? What is your website strategy going to be? How are you going to lay that out? You need to start considering how many pages you're going to have on your website. How are you going to position your firm in the market? Like, are you going to position yourself to be, a sole practicing attorney? Are you going to position yourself as being a partner within a law practice with other partners? And then you need to use this opportunity as you position yourself in the market to build up your professional credibility. And then you need to build your client acquisition system. This is an important piece here for you to consider. And that is because you need to be thinking about how are you going to acquire clients? Without acquiring clients, you really don't have a practice. What you have is pretty much a hobby because you don't have clients. So you need to ensure that you have built out a client acquisition system, which is going to include a referral network, how you're going to get cases and matters referred to you, who you're going to refer cases and matters to. How are you going to generate direct client acquisition? Meaning, how are you going to acquire clients? What ways are you going to be able to reach those clients? How are you going to develop your strategic relationships? Meaning, individuals who are partners of your practice that will help support you as you work with clients, give resources to your clients, and of course, not expecting those to be complimentary, but in the event that your client needs something else, like who are these individuals or other businesses that are going to be able to help you support your clients? This is also where you're going to build your visibility and authority in the market, in order for you to be able to attract clients to you. What does that look like? You need to start thinking about, what places do you need to be present? Where do you need to go? Who do you need to see in these places, and building relationships in these places in order for you to have the authority that you need. That then leads me to talk about your sustainable growth strategy. It's one thing, yes, to start a law practice and you have a couple of clients, but if those are transactional, which means that once a transaction is closed, they've gone away, what are you going to do to attract more, which is going to allow you to grow? You need to have a sustainable growth strategy in place that allows you to level up from being, just starting out to then leveling up to having a complete and steady flow of clients coming in that allows you to grow, to acquire clients, yes, but also to add personnel to your practice. And now looking at your operational infrastructure, your case management system needs to be in place before you open your doors, because you need to set reminders in there, filing dates. You need to figure out, how do you manage the intake process when a client picks up the phone and calls and decides that they want to work with you. What does your intake process look like? Do you have a billing system in place? How do you bill the clients? Once they decide to start working with you, you need to, of course, take a retainer. What is your plan for taking that retainer, right? On the back of that, you need a document management system for exhibits, evidence, documentation for which you are exchanging with clients needs to be secure. Where is that going to be? Where is it going to live? What platform are you going to use? You need to decide what that is. Other general software systems that you're going to need. There are lots of other moving parts and pieces that you're going to need. For example, an accounting system. I mentioned before your billing system. What are these systems going to be? Do they talk to each other? Are they integrated? How do you integrate them? And I mentioned this before, your insurance and your risk management needs to be considered at this level as well, because you need to get that operational infrastructure in place, but you need to have your risk management and insurance in place as well. And then you need to think about, how are you going to depart your current rule ethically? You can't just walk out. You can't just quit. You can't mess up your reputation, right? Of course, there's some instances that don't allow for you to come up with a game plan before you leave the current practice that you're in. But for those individuals that are still within a practice, you want to be able to come up with a strategic plan on how you exit. I never recommend that you just pick up your bag and walk out. You actually need to be planning a pre-resignation strategy. What that means is that you need to start looking at your client relationships. Do you have client relationships? And if so, how can they migrate over if you don't have some type of agreement that says that you cannot? Of course, you're not going to be poaching these clients. You're not going to be going after them directly. You're going to, yes, exit, but ensure that your client relationships are at a level that in the event that you do leave, you do decide to go ahead with this departure, that they will come and find you. So make sure those relationships are super strong. If you have not spoken perhaps to one of your past clients that you've worked with in the past for a long time, take some time to perhaps go to coffee, do a lunch, do a one-on-one virtual meeting if you can, or in-person meeting, just to ensure that you're top of mind. Then when you go to resign, you need to make sure that you're doing it the correct way. First thing that you need to do is to, of course, draft a resignation letter, an ethically drafted one. Do not call out anything that perhaps has gone wrong in that law practice while you're in the stage of resigning. Instead, you are going to give a professional written document over to your direct report or your managing partner, depending on what the setup is in your practice. So once you have done your resignation piece and you've dealt with exiting your current law practice, you now need to think about your new law working space, right? So you need to think about where you're going to operate. Where are you going to work out of? Are you going to working out of your home? Are you going to be working out of a office location? And all of that needs to be thought through from, where is it going to be located? What licenses are required for the city that I am in? And most important, your launch date, because you're going to be reverse engineering from that date, the day that you're going to resign, the day that you're going to register your entity with your Secretary of State. So these are all important things that you need to be thinking about before you depart. And like I said before, it's going to be an ethical departure and not one that you just kind of scurry away on. And now as we move through the boot camp, I wanted to highlight a few things here. These are a few mistakes, the biggest mistakes that new law firm owners make. And I think it's very important to mention them here. Mistake number one is launching without a client pipeline. I mentioned before that without clients, you don't have a law practice. This is not a situation where you can build it and they will come. You need to have some way of knowing where those clients are going to come from. You need to have some kind of strategy of knowing, like, when you get started, where is that first payment going to come from? That pipeline needs to be, determined of, like, where are you going to go get these clients from? Weak market positioning. When you decide to start your law practice, a little bit of positioning, perhaps even before you start your law practice, needs to happen. You need to be spending time being present, getting to be known in the area of practice that you're in, getting known in the pool of clients that you are going to be wanting to track and have in your pipeline. So you need to not only be thinking about positioning your practice, but you need to also think about your individual positioning so that you have a presence, you are known, and you're not just a new kid on the block when you decide to launch into your own law practice. Underpricing is another piece that we like to cover here because it's a huge mistake that new law firms make, are new practicing attorneys. And what happens is you get out of big law and you suddenly feel like discounting your prices is the way to go. I can tell you myself that when I started my agency, that was one of the mistakes that I made was underpricing my services and undervaluing essentially what I do. You have to understand that the work that you do is no less important when you're starting your own practice than it was when you were internal to a law practice. Instead, you need to be thinking that your services that you're offering is actually higher valued now because you're doing much, much more on your own and you need to lead in that way. So, as a part of the practice blueprint, sorry, blueprint, one of the things that we do is we get that mindset shift in place. And that includes understanding that lowering your prices and underestimating, perhaps all that's going to be involved with cost is something that you need to consider and invoke into your new mindset. No business development strategy. How are you going to develop the business? That's usually an afterthought, and perhaps mistake number four is probably too low down on the totem pole, but should be on the top. No business development strategy means that you have no way of developing the business. You have no idea what you're going to do to develop the business. You have no plan. So you need to have some type of business development strategy on how you're going to expand and develop this practice. And then mistake number five. This is perhaps one of the biggest no-nos. So one moment here. Looks like we're having a little issue with our technology. Whoopsie, just bear with me one moment here while I get this back up. Okay, not sure if you can see my screen or not. We're having some technical issues here. Hang on one moment. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So the last part is trying to figure it out on your own here. That is the mistake that a lot of law practices make because they try to do everything on their own and they end up making lots of mistakes and doing this trial and error stuff and end up spending a whole lot of money, spending so much time, just wasting time trying to figure it all out on their own. So you're probably wondering, how do I do this? Like, is this even possible? How do I launch, a practice? Like, how does this program work? Does it work? And I'm here to tell you about the practice blueprint so that you understand. And I'm also going to share some testimonials with you so that you can see what success has looked like for individuals who have worked directly with me in launching their law practice. So this is the blueprint program, the practice blueprint program. Over to your far left, you will see this is what the login looks like. As soon as you sign up, you have immediate access to it. So you're able to spend some time looking at all of the pre-recorded videos that are in there, all of the extra content that has been created, all of the vendors and strategic partners that we have diligently gone out and built these relationships with to offer their services to you once you launch. We will hold your hand, like I said before, through each week. There are 8 modules in here. We usually take about a week to run through each module. And in the middle here, you'll see there's a workbook that goes along with this. This is not theory in this program. Instead, this program is actual implementation. So as you are working through the workbook, you are going to notice that you're actually building your law practice as you're working through the workbook. So that's one strategy that we use to help keep you motivated in knowing that you are actually building the law practice as you work through the workbook. Then over to the far right, this is a snapshot of what Module 1 looks like, where we talk about that mindset shift and laying the groundwork. So this is just, to give you a peek at what the platform looks like that you're going to have access to. And of course, you're going to have your one-on-one sessions after you've gone through the material. So I just wanted to give you a peek into what this program looks like. So here's what the steps look like that take you through this blueprint. Step 1 is the groundwork, like I mentioned before. Step 2 is going to be your business planning. This is where you're going to build an actual structured business plan. One that has the ability to help you grow as a law practice, to tells you exactly where you're heading, and can also be used for financial institutions in the event that you need to get funding to start your law practice. Step 3 is going to be where you form your entity. This is where the structure is created, where you register and protect your firm, and actually protect yourself as well, because in this particular step is where you remove the liability away from you and establish a standalone entity that absorbs the risk. Then step 4 is where you define your niche. This is where we're going to spend time identifying who your ideal clients are. We're going to develop the avatars in knowing exactly who they are, how you serve them, and what problems you solve for them. And then step 5 is going to be your marketing plans. This is where you're going to build a marketing plan. You're going to of course, decide and determine what tools you're going to use to market your law practice. And then moving on then to your client acquisition and business development piece. This is where you're going to develop a strategy to determine a steady flow of clients from day one, and knowing how you're going to rinse and repeat that formula, that process of acquiring clients and developing the business. Then moving on to step 7, this is where your tech stack and your systems are put in place. I talked a little bit about the operational side before, and that's what essentially this is going to be a part of. So not only are you going to put the operational pieces in place, but you're also going to put your tech stack and your systems all together here. And then step 8 is going to be your departure and transition. I talked a little bit before about how that transition plan is going to look like. We're going to walk you through how you exit the law practice that you're in, and then turning the key. This is turning the key to your law practice and opening the door on day one. So this program, as you can see, we have thought about everything that's involved with starting your law practice, from the thought all the way to turning the key, walking you through the different steps on how to get there. And like I said, we're going to hold your hand in those one-on-one sessions over 8 weeks to get you to starting your law practice. So now you may be thinking this is just too hard and just impossible. It is not. And we have proof here to show you that it's not. So here's a success story from attorney Morgan, who is a litigation attorney. This is the testimonial that attorney Morgan wrote after going through the program. I've been thinking about starting my own law practice for years, but didn't know where to begin. This program gave me the clarity, structure, and confidence I've been missing. For the first time, I have a real plan and I actually feel ready. This blueprint turns my maybe one day into I can do this now. So obviously you've seen here that this has worked before for other attorneys and in this case for a litigation attorney. So let's get you off the billable hamster wheel and into opening your own law practice. That is what this is all about, right? Here we have attorney Thompson, who's a real estate attorney who's come through the program. And this is a testimonial that attorney Thompson has provided for us. This program gave me exactly what I needed to leave my firm with confidence. The transition plan alone was worth the investment. Antonia covered things I didn't even know I needed to prepare for. I launched my practice feeling organized, supported, and fully prepared. So if you are ready to own your client relationships, this is the program for you. If you have sat through the boot camp this long, you see that we know exactly what needs to be done to take you from the thought to turning the key. And launching into this practice is exactly what you need in order for you to get to the next step. So if you're ready to own your client relationships, this is the program for you. And with that, I'm going to lead you into another success story that attorney Ramirez provided for us. Attorney Ramirez is a personal injury attorney who highlights here the total mindset shift that I talked about before, in addition to, of course, the career shift. The biggest transformation for me wasn't just launching my practice, it was shifting my mindset. I went from doubting myself to truly seeing myself as a business owner. The blueprint gave me the tools, structure, and support to make decisions with confidence. I now have a practice that reflects my values and a career path I'm excited about. This program changed everything for me. So as you can see here, this is another attorney that's gone through the program, has seen success, is in the personal injury space, and is doing very well. So the build your own practice blueprint, of course, you perhaps have seen by now, is a practice that you build on your own terms and yes, on your purpose. So this is more than just building your law practice. This is building a practice on your terms. And if you are ready for ownership of your time and legacy, a practice that you are proud of, control of your growth and direction of your career, direction of your life, and to practice law on your purpose, on purpose, all you need is a blueprint. And that is what we have built here for you. We have put tireless hours into this program to allow you to launch off from thinking about starting this law practice and into launching. And again, I'm just highlighting here, this is what you'll have access to immediately after registering for the blueprint. This is immediate access into material where if you decided to register today, you could get started today. And with that, you can even book times in our calendars right away in order for you to get started with your first one-on-one session on the calendar. So just talking more here about the Blueprint program and what it does, essentially it lays the foundation to set attorneys from, that billable hamster wheel to being in your own law practice with proven steps and frameworks for attorneys to launch, right? This is taking you from thinking about the program to launching. Over to the right here, you'll see that I've included two QR codes that I want to mention here that will help you to find out more about the program. The first QR code at the top, if you scan that, will take you through to our website. And that website outlines the details about the program, how it works, and to give you more information about getting started. The second QR code allows you to schedule a confidential consultation in my calendar. Perhaps you might want to talk to somebody in more detail about the program before you get started. Maybe you have more questions, or perhaps you don't want to ask here, which is fine. But that will allow you to book a time directly into my calendar where we can talk about this some more if you're not ready to get started today and perhaps you just need more information. But getting back to the details about the program, essentially, this is an execution focused program where you're moving through the program, yes, but you're also actually building your law practice in the practice of going through it in the progress piece. You're actually building out your practice. You're not just going through the motions. It's not just theory. You're building out your practice along the way. Um, it can be self-paced if you want it to be that way as well. You can go at your own speed. Let's say you get into the program and you decide that 8 weeks is too aggressive for you. We can work with you as well to slow it down, and we can self-pace it for you to give you time to go through the program at your speed. And this is accompanied by 8 one-on-one coaching sessions, as I mentioned before, that marry up with each of the modules that make up this program. So inside the blueprint, like I mentioned before, we cover mindset adjustments, we cover client acquisition strategy, and of course, we cover your brand and branding. These are just some of the things that we cover. But the most important piece to mention here is that we go over your business development planning one-on-one to ensure that you have a plan in place to start your law practice and go beyond that. And of course, there's much, much more. There are preferred vendors, strategic partners, there are templates. There's even a resignation letter template for you to resign from your current role. So it's jam-packed with all the resources that you need to start your law practice from day one. And again, I'm including the QR code over to the right, just in case you missed it before, so that you're able to find out more about the program. And then the second QR code is for you to book a confidential consultation in my calendar to talk more about the program. And more here about what the program includes, because it's so much to include on one slide. And this is just a much more expanded list. There are over 68 recorded videos in this program. This should indicate to you that there's a lot of information in here, and that is why the guesswork has been taken out, right? So as you move through the modules, you're going to notice with every single module, they're broken into segments. And with each segment comes a recorded video or pre-recorded video where I walk you through what needs to be done. And it transfers over into your workbook where you're actually building out your program, building out your practice. And I mentioned before, you get 8 one-on-one sessions with me where we're going to walk through the program from start to finish, along with those 8 guided modules. You get templates, you're going to get a workbook, you're going to get a launch roadmap, strategy sessions. You're also going to get an implementation checklist that you're going to work with, and then vetted vendors for opening your law practice. So if you need somebody to perhaps work on with your website, you need somebody to help you with your logo, all of that is in this program and can be taken advantage of once you register. So lawyers, this could be you. And this in action looks like you getting freedom and full autonomy of your practice, ownership of your time and your client relationships. You're going to get control over your career path, the ability to work from anywhere. As you can see, this guy here is working from where he wants and can still practice law. Of course, you get to control your schedule. You get that financial independence, flexibility, and work-life balance like you never had before. And most importantly, control of your legacy. So here again, I'm showing you what it looks like to get started. If you get started today, if you proceed with registering for the program, over to the left is a screenshot of what that email will look like that will arrive in your inbox right away. You would then click on that login button that's showing here on the left in blue. And once you click that, you get to set up your sign in and login details, and then you get access immediately to the program. So you get to get started right away. You get to get into the program, start watching the videos, which you can see over to the far right. That's what it looks like inside the actual live program. So there's no waiting once you register. Instead, you will be able to, get started on the process of building your practice blueprint. And within the program, there's going to be a link in there that you click on to schedule time in my calendar to book a one-on-one session with me for us to get started working on building out your law practice. And as a special offer for today, and this is going to be available to you for 4 days only, that 15% discount that I mentioned before is available through this QR code here. I am going to, like I said, circulate this video again, but if you want to take a screenshot of this slide, you'll be able to capture the QR code that allows that discount code for the next 4 days. And also on the far right here at the bottom, again, is the QR code for you to schedule a confidential consultation with me to talk through perhaps next steps, what you want to do from here, and also for me to help you determine whether or not you're ready for this next step. Over to the left are my contact details. In the event that you wanted to send me an email, you wanted to visit our website, or perhaps you wanted to check out our social media channels. But now that we've come to the end of the bootcamp material, I'm going to now stop sharing, stop the recording, and allow you to ask any questions that you may have, or to look at any questions that perhaps anyone has put in the chat. If you just bear with me a quick moment here while I get to that.